Well, welcome back to Garage Money Pit. You can see from the background and the lack of Subaru in focus here that I finally got the Subaru down to the shop that is doing the engine replacement. This was a fairly long saga because there were just part supply issues left, right and center. We ended up waiting almost a month on some OEM parts we needed. So one other thing that got in the way with the BRZ saga and all that is also I had to get part of the roof on the shop replaced because it was leaking again after I had already had somebody replace part of it. So all that got in the way, hence the lack of videos recently. So back to the Maxton. There are a couple of things I want to address today. The self-disassembling horn button that you've probably noticed in the last video on the Maxton, I have a replacement finally, and just need to do some basic servicing, get it off the wheel dollies that it's still sitting on. Okay, so you can see that the actual horn button is missing, and it's disassembled itself before. According to the Maxton owners group on Facebook, the Motolita steering wheel horn button, the large one, is a direct replacement. So I think you can pop out the horn button without taking the steering wheel off. I just find it easier to do it with the steering wheel off. Okay, and you can see that there's the metal ring and that has the horn button popped in. So you pop it out. This horn button is slightly smaller, but it actually sits in the center of the ring. So hey, this is actually going to work. It's better than a horn button that ends up in your face every time you press the horn button. Okay, so I've created this little adapter harness that just has a ring terminal on one end and a flat terminal on the other, so it plugs in here. As I mentioned, that ring now goes outside the button. Temporarily hold it, plug this guy in, and then somehow convince this button to clip in. You can hear the fuel pump run. At least it's... Yeah, it's relatively clean oil and it seems to flush nicely as well. On the other side of the car, just loosen the oil filter. I'm hoping I'm not gonna regret that. So I'm using a Fram titanium filter. I'm usually not a big fan of Fram filters, but it was either that or a K&N, and I figured I'll try that out on an engine that doesn't see that much like sustained track driving or autocrossing and stuff. Okay, put that one on. Obviously in this case you don't fill the oil filter beforehand because it's obviously upside down, so that would be a really bad day if you did that. And of course now we get to the point where the comment section is starting to scream, because I'm actually using fully synthetic oil in an old rotary. Before you go completely medieval on my backside, there is a method to this madness. A, I want it for its superior cleaning performance, and B, the modern synthetics are generally okay in rotaries. the issue with synthetic in the rotaries used to be that they produce a lot of ash, and my understanding is that with the more modern synthetics that's less of an issue. So I'm gonna pull the dust cap off and see what it looks like in there, maybe add a little bit more grease and try to adjust it again. Okay, here we go. Just about get this thing off. Doesn't look too bad, but I think a little bit more grease and just probably one tick more adjustment should do the job. And yes, for a full service I should take the hub off and all that. I understand that. I'm trying to get this car ready so I can get it through the inspection. I actually suspect that that's the grease that was in there before, because there isn't much in the way of like red wheel bearing grease, other than this red line stuff that I'm currently trying to put on here. Put the wheel bearing in. Okay, so that's definitely too much. So let's back it off 1/8 of a turn. So the rotor is also slightly out of spec, I think. You can feel it grind a little. Let's put the wheel back on and see if it still wiggles. Okay, spins freely. And no play. So there was actually some play in the wheel bearing. Hopefully that'll make the brakes feel better as well, because there was a slight brake judder. So that's good news. As I mentioned, I'll do the other side. I'm not going to film that because it's the other side. Okay, it is now the day after the oil change, and I've just come back from taking the Rollerskate for a spin. And yes, it's running a little bit nicer. It clearly needed to run. The engine, like all rotaries, need to be exercised frequently, and I haven't, so it was very obvious that it's running much nicer now. Unfortunately, the brake judder is still present. It's not as bad as it was, so the wheel bearings did have something to do with it. But I still have to go back and look at it a bit more. It might just be that I have to replace the brake discs. We'll have to see about that. But other than that, the current plan is use it maybe for another month or so, because early November is probably the latest I can use this around where I live. And then address some of the other issues that I know about. I do need to pull the dash. There's an issue with the speedo that I believe I've mentioned in previous videos. The fuel gauge likes to indicate that the fuel tank is full no matter how much fuel is in there, so I have to address that. And with all fiberglass cars, there's some issues with some of the other gauges, grounding issues, something like that. So I have to have a look at the electrics. But other than that, and a clean and maybe a ceramic coat, there isn't much to do on this car, which is nice, because that means I can finally go back to one of the other project cars. So thank you for watching this video. Give it a thumbs up if you like what you saw. And we'll have some more content coming. There'll be a little bit more motorcycle content. There's another bike I really have to get back on the road. And yeah, hopefully the BRZ is going to be back in time for at least one last track event. So we'll see about that.